Good morning, everyone. My name is Kamran Palani. I'm research fellow at the Middle East Research Institute. I'm really happy to be part of this panel to moderate this very important panel in our second day of the MERI Forum. I know it's early morning. People might not feel energetic, listening to political discussions. However, there is never a boring moment in the Middle East politics, especially when Iranian and Turkish perspectives are involved and concerned. When I was doing homework for this panel, I have been reading what has been written on the topic and the subject of our panel, the regional order, and what type of order we need in our region. As scholars and researchers have been providing deep and detailed and comprehensive research over the past 5 years, suggesting and conceptualizing new ideas, new proposals for the region. I think at the moment, we have to ask, I believe, a different question. Are we really interested in regional order? Are the major regional powers ready for building this order? And it's very, very common when we look at the analysis and the literature and the discussions, it's very easy to find out that our region is undergoing profound moments of change and transformations. And it's very simple also to argue that if we continue along this direction and this path, things will get increasingly worse for the people, for the governments, for the societies. I think this is the need is always there, is already there, the need to think about a new regional order. I think what we want to ask today is really to see the interests and the policies and the visions of the key regional powers, and what is really common to say that is that the order is not possible without regional powers. And one of my friends told me that this is a very complex, very difficult panel to address all of the aspects of the issue. And I replied him, I said, well, it's difficult, but I have an easy job because I have top diplomat here and also top academic and as well as former government official here. So hopefully we will cover most of the aspects of the question of the regional order and the order for the Middle East. And I have outlined, structured the panel into 3 parts. We will start with a question for the broader region, and then we will focus on the context and the level of Iraq, and then we will go, if time allows, we will focus on the Erbil level and the Kurdistan region level as well. I would like to welcome my distinguished panelists and speakers, Mr. Ambassador Ali Raza, Turkish Ambassador to Iraq, and dear Saeed Kazem Sajjadpour, Advisor to the Foreign Minister and former Director of the Institute for Political and International Studies in Iran. I will start with a question for Mr. Ambassador about Turkey. What Turkey has taken a quiet role in its foreign policy across the Middle East, especially in areas that are undergoing instability. Of course, some of these issues are very critical for you. My question is, how would you summarize Turkey's main objectives in its foreign policy in the region? We cannot understand the region without understanding Turkish visions, actions, decisions, and perspectives. And the understanding of these are critical to understand the current dynamics. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamran Bey. So it seems that Erbil people really would like to sleep in the morning rather than coming here and listen to these bothering speeches. The title of the forum, I guess, really means a lot. A stable Iraq for a stable Middle East, and it was the very concept that Prime Minister Kazemi based its Baghdad conference on in late August. And I think that emanates a very constructive message to the region and beyond, that without a stable Iraq, it's impossible to have a stable region, as well as considering that it has global ramifications. It also means a lot for, it speaks volumes, shortly. Turkey's foreign policy to Iraq. It is not a million-dollar question. Everybody uses these phrases that I'm going to use now. Whichever country's ambassador would sit in this chair, I would assume would repeat the same phrases. But when we say, as Turks, these phrases, we mean it, because it's crucially important for Turkey to base its foreign policy to these pillars. What are these pillars? So I will try to be as analytical as possible to keep your attention in this early morning hours. 1, stability. 2, security. And 3, prosperity. If these 3 pillars, we move on a positive direction, it helps both Iraq and Turkey, and not only to these 2 countries, but also to the region and to the globe. This is our vision, basically, as simple as this. So let me get into some depth in these 3 pillars, starting from security. Now, I will use a metaphor, again, for the simple reason that it makes more meaningful. It makes it easier to understand for the audience, but the only condition is the audience should empathize itself, putting themselves into Turkey's shoes, or in any other country's shoes, neighboring Iraq. The question is, what kind of neighbor would you like to have in the real world? Just imagine yourself. You're going to choose an apartment or a house. What kind of a neighbor in terms of security? Would you prefer a neighbor that poses a threat to you each and every day? Would you prefer a neighbor that undermines your, security as family? Or would you have a peaceful, constructive, collaborative neighbor? This is, I think, a very simple question, and you can answer each one of you in your own terms. Let me go on with the question. Would you like to have a neighbor in its own apartment, having a criminal, keeping that criminal in his house, and that criminal inflicts damage on your house? So not necessarily the household owner, but there is an intruder into the house, a criminal. The household owner keeps that criminal in his house, turns a blind eye when this criminal damages your house, may throw a stone or may smuggle in, sneak in your house at night, etc. Make metaphors as much as you want. And what would you do in that case? You have a neighbor, there's a criminal in your next apartment. What would you do? You would warn your neighbor. Tell him that, please stop him. Please get him under control. He's damaging us. And just imagine that criminal starts damaging also the owner of the neighboring apartment. So then you have a common enemy or threat or whatever. You would start collaborating how to keep that criminal out of control or out of even picture, eliminate him. What would you do if your neighbor is reluctant to keep that criminal out of his house? That criminal damages your house, breaks the windows, scratches the walls. You warn the neighbor. You warn the neighbor. You beg him, please stop him. Please keep him under control. And the household owner says, sorry, either because he's incapable or reluctant. These are open-ended questions. I will not give the answer. But our conclusion for Turkish foreign policy is we would like to have a neighboring country, namely Iraq, for the purpose of this forum, to provide security to itself and around, and to Turkey. So the very first pillar is we would like to have a secure Iraq. Stability. Again, neighboring metaphor. Would you like to have a neighbor that has always now noises, quarrels, disturbing you in the middle of the night, one kid fighting the other kid, father is quite harsh to his wife, and etc. Would you like to have that kind of neighbor? It's a very simple metaphor. Or would you like to have a neighbor that's peaceful, quiet, in good terms with you, helpful, and stable, stable, predictable? We want a stable Iraq. For the very simple reason that our development model, Turkey, development model, we don't have oil, we don't have natural gas. The only resource that we have is human. And that human resource should be channeled to production, industrial production, medium or high-level technology usage and production, and this production should be consumed in the country as well as exported. And this export will bring us, currency to feed the growth model of Turkey. For the exports, it's export-based development model, in other terms. We need open, stable, secure routes. And one route that goes south to the Middle East, to the Gulf and beyond, is through Iraq. Because of what's going on in Syria, it's blocked. So Iraq is an artery, is a main artery that we should be interacting. For our goods to be transported, for other goods to be coming to Turkey via Iraq, we need that artery to be safe and sound. Very simple, very simple. I know, I think time is pressuring. Well, if you want me to continue for the third one,
I will.
It's okay.
Thank you. I will use the same, your metaphor of neighbor as well. Of course, even in real life, there are some more powerful neighbors, some small neighbors, and the expectations are also different based on the power, the history, and the strengths of each neighbor. Sorry, but I will ask a different question. At the moment in the Middle East, we are witnessing a regional de-escalation. We are seeing countries are mending ties with each other, and they are having conversations with each other, Turkey and UAE, Turkey and Egypt, and Iran and Saudi Arabia. I mean, how will these regional de-escalation factor in Iraq, in Turkish foreign policy, in Turkish actions in Iraq? Where is Iraq in this new regional de-escalation phase?
From the same vantage point, a stable Iraq would provide the other regional countries to come together, to solve their differences, to talk about their different points of views, which Iraq is serving now. I think Prime Minister Kazemi's record on this track is quite positive. And a stable Iraq, a secure Iraq, a powerful Iraq would not be the area for other countries to settle their scores. So it is a matter of whether you are diffusing positive energy to the region or you are getting or attracting negative energy inwards. It totally depends on Iraq, on which profile would Iraqis prefer to be in.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I will come back to you and I will ask you a question really about when you outlined the three elements of Turkish policy and interests in Iraq: security, prosperity, and stability. And I will ask you a question later: where is Kurdistan region located in your visions and policies for Iraq? Thank you. Now I will, give the floor to my dear panelists here, and also looking at the perspectives of another major historical power in the Middle East, which is Iran. And when we look at Iran in its neighborhood, in its immediate and extended neighborhoods, and we are seeing that Iran are facing challenges and pressures in Azerbaijan, in Afghanistan, in Syria, and in Iraq, and in Lebanon. And so our question is, how will all of these changes influence Iran's plans to establish a new regional order for the Middle East and for the region? And the floor is yours.
Thank you. بیانی باش دوستان عزیز، جاری که وی هاتما با کردستان زور خوشحالم، سپاس بخوا. Thanks God that I'm here and I appreciate
زور بخیر بن.
Thank you. Being here and I really I'm happy indeed, and I do thank God for giving me this opportunity. And I would like also to start by thanking Dr. Dilaver for inviting me and for his efforts. And I'm not exaggerating that I do believe that Dr. Dilaver, first of all, is a model for regional think tanks and maybe for global ones because of his moderation as well as his very appreciated maturity. And I think his maturity is needed in the region among people here, and I do thank him for really providing such a space. You and the ambassador talk about early morning. If you let me, I start by a joke on early morning, and the goal of the joke is, though I have the title of the advisor to the minister, but I talk as a scholar and devoid of official, let's say, wording, or what I say is not the official word. The joke, of course, I was ambassador personally. It's a joke. I hope you don't get it personally. The joke says, what's the difference between ambassadors, generals, and scholars? And it's about early morning. And the answer is, all over the world, generals don't do anything real, but they start very early in the morning. If you go to military barracks, they start early morning. Ambassadors, they don't do anything real also, but they end very late in the evening, so they have to go to reception. And the scholars, they are confused, sometimes early morning, like today, sometimes late, But in any case, they cannot live without conceptual frameworks. They need conceptual frameworks. So I think I would answer your question in a conceptual framework, that how the relationship between Iran, the region, and Iraq, the Kurdish region, can be understood, can be thought about, can be analyzed. And I'm not in the business of justification, just trying to understand how this interaction can be analyzed. And my conceptual framework is composed of 3 concepts, ABC. A, assumptions. B, building blocks, and C is cognitive map. Let me briefly to go each of them. Assumptions. Assumptions are key. And we start by assumptions. And there are several assumptions about the region, about Iran, which needs to be deconstructed. The first assumption is a type of a structuralist, determinist, essentialist approach, that something is wrong with the region. The region is weird. The region should be fixated from outside. And I think this structuralist approach is in the mind of many, including a particular group of neoconservatives in the United States. And I can go to details of scholars who have argued about that and other structuralists. I think it is wrong. Because nothing in the region, in the people of region, is wrong. We are not different from other parts of the world. We are the same human beings. Second assumption, which needs to be really detected and deconstructed, is a simplistic reductionist approach, that everything about, let's say, Iran is reduced to single concept, a simple notion. I do remember several years ago when we had non-aligned summit in Tehran. Ban Ki-moon was there, and he gave a speech in our School of International Relations, and I moderated the speech. He also used some simplistic reductionist approach on Iran, but he praised the Iranian carpets and rugs. And he said, I see them in the United Nations every day, they are very beautiful. I said, Mr. Secretary General, look, Iranian carpets are composed of millions of knots. But at the end, they are beautiful. They are a reflection of Iranian society. Iran is a complex society. You cannot reduce it to one single accident, notion, statement, or concept. The same goes for the region. Arabs are like this. Kurds are like that. Iranians are like... I think this simplistic reductionist approach is wrong, and it doesn't produce understanding. The third, let's say, assumption which needs to be deconstructed is alarmistic and threat-producing notions. Iran is a dangerous country. Be careful. They are overtaking the region. They are doing this. So a sense of permanent, perpetuated fear is injected in the region. And I think this is also wrong. It is not serving the interests of the region. So if these assumptions are wrong and needs to be deconstructed and rejected, so what are the building blocks of any regional thinking order? My B. I think there are many building blocks, but I identify at least 3, which are very important. First is place. By place, I mean geopolitics. You refer to Afghanistan, Azerbaijan. Place is very important here. Geopolitics is very important. We have 15 neighbors. We are connecting 5 regions together, and we are not part of them. We are neighboring Arab world, but we are not Arab. We are neighboring Indian subcontinent, but we are not part of subcontinent, and so on and so forth. So place is very critical to understand geopolitics. Second, past matters. That is history. And I don't want to go to ancient history when there was no country, you know, very few countries. And even recent history is very important. History matters. What happened to this region matters. Third, I think people. Yeah. People are the building blocks here. Yeah. We should be, and I think, as I said, nothing is wrong with the people. People, we feel each other, we understand each other, our foods are like the same. We are not, like say, divided even by culture. Our culture is the same. When I eat Turkish food, Kurdish food, in Arab food, I feel very affinity, and they are different, of course. But I think these people which have, I think, no animosity toward each other, we share civilizational, cultural, linguistic heritage together, are the building blocks of any regional thinking. My final point on cognitive map. I think everything starts with our mind. How we look at these different issues, how we look at the world, and this is what I call the cognitive map. 3 very quick points on the cognitive map that we need to understand. First, I think the world is not very vertical anymore. That means it's not just United States, Russia, China which matter, or EU. We matter also. Turkey matters. Iran matters. Kurdish region matters. I think this is what I call horizontal perspective. And it's so important not to be locked in a vertical cognitive prison. Second point is we have multiple actors these days. Multiple actors. Global actors, regional actors, national actors, subnational actors. The region, I mean the Kurdistan region is an actor. Who can ignore this actorship? And I think this concept of multiple actorship is very, very important for any regional design, any regional reshaping. Finally, let me go to my final point on the cognitive map, and that is practical steps for any regional order. And I think already I said any regional order starts with rejection of ossified mentalities. It requires looking at deeply to the region, but it also needs very, very practical steps on a state level. That means we have to take bilaterals seriously. I think the base is when we have a good bilateral between Iran and Iraq, as we have, when we have a good bilateral between Iran and Turkey, I think the more you have a deeper bilateral, individually speaking, when you have multi-dimensional, let's say, bilateral, that's very interesting. Iran and Turkey, I think the Western scholarship doesn't pay attention much to non-Western, let's say, actors. We have borders secure for 4 centuries. Yeah. And we have a multi-dimensional relationship. Iranian-Turkish relationship is very multidimensional. If we have differences on some issues, which we have, the other dimensions recover and make this more steady. The same with Iraq, we are developing a very multidimensional. So, in answering your question, I think multidimensionality of bilaterals are very key. Yeah. So I stop here. By my ABC, assumptions be rejected, building blocks need to be identified, and cognitive maps need to be drawn.
Thank you so much, really. Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. I think the recognizing of multiple local actors is really essential in conceptualizing, at least at the scholarly, at the policy level, thinking about how we can accommodate the old and new and emerging local actors into any possible future design for the order in the region. And you mentioned people. Really, it's really important to ask what is a referent object of this possible new project for the region. Are they states, the top decision makers, or societies, or people, or all of them together? I think we can make a good progress when we look at the bottom-up approach and the bottom-up side of these political and security transformations and changes in our region. I will ask you a very different question. I think this is most of our participants are looking for some answers about one of the most important process in Iraq is the government formation after the elections. So Iraq had elections about 2 weeks ago, and still the results are not finalized, but it's clear who are the winners, who are not, I don't want to call them losers, but they didn't perform very well. So we want to really, and through your scholarly deep insights, we want to understand how does Iran view the election results and the government formation process? And if I may ask you a specific question, how do you see the rise of Sadrists in Iraq?
I think this is really my very personal view. I think Iran appreciates the democratic processes in Iraq. It's very important. Iraq is a nation state, has a very defined constitution, acts within the constitution, and is practicing this democratic process very, I think, interestingly. So if you look at this, any result which is based on this legal process is very important. And I think, I hear, that's very interesting, I hear some reductionist approach, some simplistic approach about the Iraqi complexities. That, Iranians lost, Turkish lost, this one lost. I think this type of simplification about Iraq is dangerous. Yeah. You have groups, parties, they have a consensus on the basics, that is the survival, security, prosperity of Iraqi nation state. They differ on approaches, political approaches, and I think they are doing a very fine job in their own democratic process. So as an Iranian, and I have talked with my colleagues, I think they appreciate, and I think any result which is acceptable due to the legal frames of Iraqi. So I may like some politician, may dislike some the other, you may have some tendency, but you have to look at the big picture. The big picture is that Iraq is acting in its own constitutional frame.
Thank you so much for the answer. Before opening the floor to the participants, I will, as I promised, I will come back to the panels to ask them a question about the Kurdistan region, where we are in Erbil. Mr. Ambassador, I think the majority of the people in Kurdistan, the majority of political parties, appreciate the good cooperation, the strong cooperation between the region and Turkey, economically, at the trade level, the security, etc. But there is, I have to say that there is also a concern among the people about your recent military engagement deep inside the territory of the Kurdistan region. So there is uncertainty, there is feeling of insecurity and the lack of certainty about the future. I want to ask you, how can you avoid this feeling of uncertainty among the people about your military engagement, which you say it's part of a major element of your vision for Iraq, which is security. It's to do with a neighbor. But my question is, how can you prevent this uncertainty among the people?
Very legitimate question. But first and foremost, I would like to really extend my appreciation of a very good theoretical framework of Mr. Sajjadpur. I felt like in political science department years, and it really helps to deconstruct or reconstruct those building blocks. And I was thinking that diplomats are the only ones who tell the audience to go to hell, so that the audience would look forward the trip. But Mr. Sajjadpur was quite able to, this emanate positive radiation to the floor. Actually, the same applies for the Kurdistan regional government, that we would like to have stable neighboring relations. Actually, KRG is the neighboring party in our relations with Iraq. All the border, 335, I guess, kilometers, extends along the Kurdistan regional government and Turkey. We don't have a border with the Iraqi central government itself. We consider KRG as an integral part of Iraqi state. It's, at the end of the day, a unitary state in the eyes of Turkey. Yes, it's a federal system. Kurdistan regional government has its own constitutional rights and responsibilities, and vice versa. So the dialogue and the points of conflict, the point of contentious issues between the central government and KRG affects the stability of Iraq, and it directly has an impact on Turkey-Iraqi relations. So we would like to have those contentious issues to be solved smoothly, be it budget, territory, oil, energy, whatever, or budget allocation and salaries. Regarding the second part, security, well, I mean, definitely, if that criminal is in the next door, neighboring house, we would ask whoever is the responsible person, be it KRG or central authority, to get rid of that criminal. And we are doing the same, depending on the means and capabilities of the household itself, as well as its intention. I think KRG has belatedly understood that there is a security threat from the terrorist organizations. And now it is coping with this problem itself. We extend our assistance. We do cooperate, because it's a common threat at the end of the day. It is posing a threat to the region. Not only the KRG, it's also posing a threat to the Iraqi central forces and authority. Look at Sinjar, what's going on. Yazidis are traumatized, first by Daesh, and then the PKK. So the thing is, our economic, social, historical, cultural bonds are so strong with the Kurdish people. And we should not give the floor to those criminals that claim to be representing the Kurds, but also killing them. This is total absurdity. So Kurds are an important element of the Iraqi system, Iraqi nation system, an important neighbor for us with its government in the north. And we are fully ready to improve and further enhance our relations with the Kurdistan regional government.
Thank you so much. My last question to Mr. Saeed here is that Iran is a strong ally to the Kurdistan regional government, and more specifically to the Kurdish ruling parties, to both of them. And it has also strong relations with some new actors in Iraq within the new Hashd al-Shabi. And at the moment, one of the major concerns of Erbil is the rocket attacks, is the attacks by some of the groups which have good relations with Iran. At the same time, as I've mentioned, Erbil has also strong relations with Tehran. So my question is, I know it's not difficult to conceptualize it from the scholarly perspective, but my question is how can Iran help Erbil to address this issue?
I think in order to answer your question, you have to keep in mind 2-3 points. First, Iran, among the neighbors of Iraq, I think is the only country which is bordering with, let's say, these 3 communities of Iraq. Yeah. Kurdish, Sunni, and Shia. Kurds in the north, Sunnis in the middle, and Shia in the south. And I think that tells a lot about the inclusiveness of Iranian policy in this region. Second point is about Iranian-Kurdish relationship, which I think is very deep, and I can conceptualize it that by narrating a very important, very easily known proverb that a friend in need is a friend indeed. I think mutually we and Kurds are friends, and in need we have been friends. Historically, I don't want to go to details. Recent times, if you look at what happened with the aggression of Ba'athi regime towards Kurds and the Iranian reaction, and in recent, let's say, memory, the unjust imposed sanctions on Iran and the sympathy of Kurdish people and the action, I think these are really reflection of friendship in need, which is indeed a friendship. And I think nothing can damage these very, I have to say, structural, deep-rooted bonds. Now I hear from my colleagues here working, our mission here, our consulate, that the interaction between people on different levels, whether it is medical tourism to Iran, education, study, watching Iranian movies. Actually, I was impressed by the number of people who speak Persian. When I said I'm happy that I'm here, it is a very, let's say, real feeling that I showed. I think the number of people who speak Persian here, some of them have not been to Iran. They learn it through the movies and so on and so forth. So I think this is very, very important. Now on the very specific issue that you mentioned, the third point, I think it is not in my capacity to really comment, but I know about, let's say, what Americans are doing to this region. It is not something of Kurdish nature. You will limit it to the issue of Kurdish. I think what the damage they have done to Afghanistan is, I think they have ruined the country. They left, and the ruin now is with us in the region. They have implanted mines in the region. So I think, without going to the details, because I don't know the details of your very specific, I have to see the big picture that the United States is problematic in the region.
Thank you so much. Thank you for both of you, actually. We have covered many good, most of the important aspects of our main objective in this panel. Let's take some questions, but before this, I want to know how much time I've got. Okay, what time? Because Okay, very good, excellent. And now the rule was like yesterday was ladies first, and I don't know. Yeah, I will take a question first here, And then another question from the middle, and then another question here. But please, I would be grateful if you can keep it short, so we can cover as many questions as possible. First, I will start with Abu Bakr. Please here. And briefly introduce yourself, and then اگر کورتی که و سپاس دکم که Abu Bakr. سپاس.
زور سپاس. والله کم پرسیار بو برای سفیری ترکیه.
I can translate it later, but if you need a translation device, please. It's working? Yeah. I need help from, yeah, please, Kaka. Please, go ahead.
Okay. یکم پرسیار بۆ بەڕێز سەفیری تورکیا پێتوانیە کە ئەو کێشەی پێت وایە کە کێشەی دراوسێکانە کێشەی ماڵی ناوخۆی تورکیایە پەڕیوەتە دراو
Channel 2.
بەڵێ پرسیار بۆ بەڕێز سەفیری تورکیا پێتوانیە ئەو کێشەی کە تۆ باسیەکەی بەڕێزت کە کێشەی دراوسێکانە و کۆمەڵی تاوانبارە کێشەی ناوخۆی تورکیایە و ئێوە لە ساڵی 2008 بۆ 2015 پرۆسەیەکی ئاشتیتان هەبوو مامەڵەتان لەگەڵ ئەو تاوانبارانە کرد سەلمانتان کە کێشەکە هی تورکیایە بەڵام چۆتە دەرەوە ئایا کێشەکە بە کوشتنی تاوانبارەکان چارەسەرە بێ یا دووبارە دروستکردنەوەی پرۆسەی ئاشتی و کێشە لە ناو ماڵی خۆی تورکیا زۆر سپاس بۆ کۆماری ئیسلامیێران یعنی وەکو سێ تێبینیم بۆ کۆماری ئیسلامی
I think he can also speak Farsi.
ئێرانی کۆماری ئیسلامیێران وەک سەرچاوی مەترسی هەڕەشە یعنی وێ ناکرێ پێتوانیە کۆماری ئیسلامیێران خۆی ڕۆڵی هەبووە لەبەر سێشت یەکەمیان کاتی خۆی پرۆسەی تەستیرکردن و ناردنە دەرەوەی شۆڕشی هەبووە ئەمە سیاسەتی فەرمی ئێران بووە شۆڕش ئێران بووە دووەمیان چەند مەسوول ئێرانی قسەیان کردووە کە ئێران ئیمپراتۆریەتە و لە چوار وڵاتی ناوچەکەیە حاکمە سێمیان چاودێران و هەندێک لە خەڵک پیان وایە کۆماری ئیسلامیێران زیاتر ئیدارەی ململانەکانەکە وەک لەوەی چارەسەری ململانەکان بکە و پرسیاری دواییش بۆ هەردووکیان بۆ هەردوو بەڕێزەکان
دوو پرسیارە زۆری دەوێت چونکە زۆر
ئاخر پرسیار ئایا بوونی ئەمریکا و غەیری ئەمریکا و خۆرئاوا و غەیری خۆرئاوا لە ناوچەکەیە بەڵگە نیە لەسەر ئەوەی کە گەلانی ناوچەکە وڵاتەکان توانای چارەسەرکردنی کێشەکانیان نییە بۆشایی بۆ ئەوان بەجێهێڵن ئەوان ئەو بەشایە پڕەکەنەوە زۆر سپاس.
We will take 3 questions and then if time allows we will take another round. This man in the middle, yeah. And then we will take a question from Tina.
Okay, thank you very much. Mohammed Waladbeki from Salahuddin University. My question is the same almost. The way you pictured the metaphor of neighbors, the good neighbor is Turkey and the bad neighbor is Iraq. But the way we see it from here, the criminals you mentioned are from Turkey originally. So the issue is an internal Turkish issue. And they are not people from Iraq who are in, the way you mentioned it, criminals are in Iraq, but they are originally from Turkey. They have come from Turkey to Iraq. So our question from our perspective is when Turkey is going to end its own internal problems, when it stops bombarding our villages and disturbing the life of our citizens. This is how we see it. It's the same for Iran. The people who are coming from Iran and who are here, Iran is accusing Iraq of sheltering or harboring them. they are also from Iran. So when Iran is going to end its own internal issues. And the second question is about the talk by Mr. Sajjadpur. So he talked about the negative assumptions. But negative assumptions, they don't come from nowhere. Why do you think there are so many negative assumptions about Iran? What Iran has done wrong, or what is the source of all these negative assumptions?
Thank you. Thank you, dear. From Tanya Khan. Yep.
Thank you, and good morning. I am very glad and I'm very happy to hear we are such great neighbors. This is wonderful. However, I would like to put light on the whole issue of climate change. If you, both of you, if you're such great neighbors to Iraq, why are you shutting down the water supplies? Why are you deforesting our forests? Why are you not allowing us, and you are drying up the marshes where all the Shias are, and you are drying up Alwand, and you're drying so many things. So, good neighborly actions means that we want what's best for our neighbors as well. So I really would like you to give me an honest answer about this. And as climate change, and everybody's talking about it, desertification of Iraq is one of the main issues that we are going to be facing very soon.
Thank you, Tanya Khan. Shall we take these questions and then we will allow for, I think...
On the condition that you give us enough time, because I studied my homework, and this question I would love to answer.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So give us enough time to Sajjadpur as well.
Yeah, I think the questions are for both of you, mostly about these issues are internal issues. What can you do to address them? Thank you. Dear, you can start.
You?
No.
Yeah.
I start.
Yeah.
I think on the issue of why these accusations about Iran, there are sources. Of course there are sources. But the sources are based on the interest of those who dislike the region to be in a peaceful, let's say, situation. If you want, actually the business of accusation is the easiest way. I call it blame game. But blame game is inflamed by those who have interests. And we know that there are a lot of actors who don't have an interest in the stability of the region. They should perpetuate the threats, and I think these are the sources. Export of revolution, never Iran said export of revolution is let's say, invading other countries or is by, let's say, force. It is the ideas and Iranian revolution ideas, and I think it is appealing. I give you an example as a social scientist. I recall this. Actually, Chu Enlai, who was the, let's say, former Chinese official, was asked about the impact of French Revolution. And you know, French Revolution had a motto of equality, liberty, and fraternity. And he said 2 centuries is not enough, because still you see the ripple effect of the ideas of French Revolution. And Iranian Revolution was a real revolution, and its ideals and ideas are appealing to, freedom, like independence, and so forth. So when we talk about export of revolution, don't equate it with this accusation that you talk. I think the ideas of Iranian revolution are very significant. And I think on the issue of climate change, I see the emotionality of the question, which is very appreciated, but I think, look, this is a common issue. This is not an Iranian issue or Turkish issue or, let's say, Iraqi issue. The region has environmental problems, and environmental problems are significant, and it can be managed not by accusation, but by common, let's say, principles and so forth. And if you start by, let's say, that the other actors are doing this, I think it wouldn't solve, because our livelihood is so connected to each other by the weather. Now there is a drought in the region, and the drought is not an Iraqi drought or Turkish drought or Iranian, it's a regional one. So I think the issue of environment at large needs common practices, and I think we are good neighbors, and we can solve this. And I think on the issue that our colleagues asked, we have domestic problems. I think it is not comparable with other issues or other, let's say, groups, and I think we cannot compare two cases together at all. It is not of the same quality and nature. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the issue of climate change has the potential to provide a ground for cooperation among the powers, big powers and small powers in the region. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
The borders are irrelevant. I mean, regarding your question, I will not start with your question. First, we'll turn to the PKK and the criminal so-called issue. But it really requires cooperation of neighboring countries on a solid basis, substantive basis, and with goodwill. As Mr. Sajjadpur said, accusations doesn't help and haven't helped so far. Thanks God, with the Iraqi government, we have started very constructive cooperation. They understood us, we understood them, and now we are working together. I will dwell on it in a minute. With regard to this criminal metaphor, it was actually so simple, just to help us all to be on the same paradigm, that there is a criminal. If we agree on that, it's a good start point. There is a criminal. It was once upon a time, came out from Turkey, in the southeast part, later evolved into a terrorist organization. We have been fighting with them for the last 40 years. 40,000 plus people, kids, women, elderly, Kurds, Turks, were killed. We elevated and escalated our fight, and we have been successful. And it's not a matter of 2013, 2015 so-called peace process or whatever. They have been in Iraq since 1990s. Kandil was there. It was used as a stronghold of those criminals. I'm calling criminals just to continue with the metaphor. They are terrorist organizations as recognized by many other countries. So it's whether in Iraq or in Syria or in Turkey, doesn't matter. They are terrorist organizations that we should cooperate to eliminate them from our region. There are some external factors that feeds them. There are some actors and factors feeds them. Unfortunately, we should also confront them in their efforts to contribute those terrorist organizations. Look what's going on in Syria. They are treated as partners by some. I mean, partnering with a terrorist organization, how do you define? I don't know, in international relations terms, transitional, transactional, whatever T you want to use. But the thing is, this is a common threat. And it is not an issue of hot potato, that Turkey is successful with its fight. We threw the hot potato to Iraq's lap. Now it's your turn. Do whatever you want. It's not that issue. It's still a threat to you, to us, to the region, and to all the elements of Iraqi people, be it Kurds, Yazidis, Sunnis, and believe me, we have enough intel report that Daesh and PKK has quite very well functioning cooperation on certain areas. Because these are very useful contractors. You cannot categorize them in rigid compartments. Today they can attack to Daesh terrorists. Tomorrow you can find them flirting hand in hand. So, the second part, and also believe me that it's not only the Turkish elements in PKK. There are many others from Europe, from the region. There are Turks, yes, Turkish citizens, so-called, Kurds, Iraqis, Syrians, Iranians, and other Europeans, you name it, you name it. So it's a conglomerate of different nationalities, not only terroristic activities, it's also an organizational crime network. Go to Germany, you will see drug dealings, kidnappings, recruitment of kids. Ask the Yazidis how they suffer now in the hands of the PKK. Their kids are taken out of families, taken to Kandil. Go to Mahmur, in the camp, so-called humanitarian camp, 12,000 people. Their kids are taken out of the families, taken to the Kandil, given arms to fight.
Yeah.
So, with regard to water,
we have 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah,
okay.
and then we
I will try my best.
Yeah.
5 minutes. As Mr. Sajadpur said, it's an issue of trans-border matter. Water scarcity is in all the region. Drought seasons are in all the region and more often than before. So the thing is, Turkey in 2018 delayed the construction of a dam upon the request of the Iraqi government because Iraq was quite badly in need of water. And we said, we are delaying closing the gates of the dam to keep the water. We let the water release to the Iraqi side 3 times. Our president instructed the officials, say, Iraq is in need of water. Don't close the gates of the dam, the famous dam in the southeast. And all of a sudden, a couple of months later, we saw the Mosul flood. So people were drowned in water. Because we released the water, the Iraqi side couldn't manage how to regularize this, the regular flow of this river. So it's a matter of infrastructure. Whichever amount you would like to have, whichever amount Turkey is able to release, if you don't have infrastructure, this water will flow to Shatilar up. I went to Basra. Basra sheikhs in their divan hosted me. One came to me, and I said, okay, he's going to talk about water. He said, Mr. Ambassador, we know Turkey releases enough water. The problem is with us. We don't have dams, we don't have infrastructure, we don't have pipelines, modern pipelines. We don't have closed pipeline system. The water evaporates. The water does not go to the agricultural fields regularly because of the pipeline lack. The water goes to the Basra Gulf. So, Turkey decided to help the Iraqi side to build the infrastructure, dams. You need dams. You need pipelines. There's no pipeline. Just travel to Basra or wherever you want in the south. I mean, Erbil is in good condition relatively. You need the system that treats the water that goes to the rivers, the dirty water. I don't remember now the name. But
Yeah.
so this is the system that should be built in Iraq. And Turkey now has established a working group with the Iraqi Ministry of Water to how to treat these deficiencies in the water management system. Efficient usage of water is a must. You cannot just, accuse and finger point your neighbors, release me water. Even if we release your water, you have the capacity to use it. So Iraq needs this infrastructure, and our contractors, our business people are quite, involved into this area.
Thank you so much. Really, I'm not an expert on water and climate issue, but I mean, I think we need more visibility, because for me, it's relieving if you are talking about the logistics and infrastructure side of this issue, because we have looked at it mostly from this political competition. I think more visibility, more discussion needed. I wish I could take more questions to broaden and widen our discussions, but the time does not allow us. I'm really, really sorry. Thank you for sharing your time, your deep scholarly and policy recommendations, and thank you for this engaging audience. I'm really sorry I couldn't take many more questions. There are many recommendations that I will remember for many years. Two of them are dominant for me. First, the recognizing the multiple local actors. I think this is essential. This shows a transformation in the perspectives of major regional powers. Second is the people. How we can bring the people into these discussions when we are talking about these geopolitical and security and political issues. Thank you again for my panelists and for you and for the organizers. Thank you.